Hello, and welcome back to the Emerge Stronger podcast. My name is Sonia, and I am here with my co hosts, Melody and Aaron. And today we are bringing back to you part 2 of what happens when you are in a marriage crisis and what to do when you are in one. Last week, we talked about the top 2. We got to 2, which is first one was communication breakdown. Second one was emotional or physical distance. And now we are coming in with number 3, when trust is broken, whether in its affair, a betrayal, or hidden behaviors. And so, welcome, guys.
Hi. So I specifically want to talk about the affair. Of course, betrayal of any kind is hard. And I was listening to a podcast this was several years ago, but it was a doctor. Don't ask me his name because I don't remember it. But he was talking about why betrayal is so hard to overcome. And infidelity is betrayal. We have financial secrecy. You do something that you wouldn't think that, or your spouse does something that you wouldn't think that they would do. And the reason why it's so hard is because, they've even done studies that said that betrayal is harder to get over than the death of a child, which, you're looking at that thinking, what? That's crazy. But with a death, you have to get to the place of acceptance, right? Like, that person isn't coming back. Now, it might take a while to get there. You might have to do therapy or whatever. But with the betrayal, anytime you see that person, hear a song, think about something, you're quote unquote triggered, that people like to use that word. It has the potential to resurrect that pain all over again. And it makes it very hard to go to acceptance. So, but it doesn't mean you can't get there. It's just, it has such a potential the pain has a potential to be resurrected. And so that's why it's so hard to overcome. And so that's why it's important when you are in a relationship. Trust is not easy to build. Now, there are some attachment styles that are going to trust before others will, and all of that. But when it's broken, it's like twice or maybe even 3 times as hard to get back. And people just don't understand that it's not a matter of sweeping it under a rug or whatever. And that's why you need to protect your marriage. You need to put safeguards around your marriage so that you don't get to this place, because I think the spouse that is the one that cheats doesn't understand why the other one doesn't want to move forward. Like, they can't move on from the betrayal. And if I were the one that did the betraying, I would feel that way too. I would want the other person, because I don't want to be constantly reminded of my sins or whatever. But it changes things, or it, like, the pace has to slow down, because that other person has to process that pain. They have to process healing and all that kind of thing. And you are subject, if you're the offending spouse, you are subject to that process and the timeline of that process. And you can't rush it. Right now, that's not an excuse for the offended spouse to stay in that place, right? You can't stay the victim forever. You do need to move forward. But if somebody's saying you just need to move on, you need to move on, what does that tell that person? Tells them that your pain isn't valid. And you can't do it like that. You have to be patient. Well, both of you have to be patient. One's got to be ready to come back to the marriage, and then the other one has to understand that the healing is a process. It's not something that's just going to go away like that.
I have a question,
Mhm.
and we may have to cut this out because it's like, seriously, like, it's going through my mind as you're talking. Can a person get to the place, or is there ever a time that they don't feel betrayed? And I think what I'm trying to ask is, Melody, if it happened to you again, knowing what you know now and everything that you've gone through, would it feel like the same type of betrayal all over again, or would it be different? And there's a reason I'm asking this.
Yeah. For me, and I think it does depend on the individual, right? It depends on if the individual healed from the first go around, right? I know that I will always have a scar there. There's always going to be, what do they call that? Scar tissue. And it'll be a sensitive place, but it does not have to rule my life. But I also know that if it were to happen again, I'm in a much different place than I was the first time. There's been a lot of healing, and not just healing, but growth. And because I'm in a much different place, will I cry? Yeah. Will I mourn? Yes. But I may make different decisions for my life. Now, I'm never going to say I won't ever do that again or whatever, because I really don't know what the Lord would tell me if that were to happen again. You know, I can tell you that I'm not fearful of it happening again. And the reason why, I'm going to tell you the number reason why. The number reason why is because of David's relationship with God.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's what gives me peace.
Yeah.
The closer he is to the Lord, the more peace I have about this won't happen again. But I also do know that it has to do with my relationship with the Lord too. The
Mhm.
closer I am to the Lord, it doesn't matter what happens. And look, I don't want to go through any more painful experiences. I've been through a lot of painful experiences, but I'm only 51. I have a lot of years left, right? And so I might, but I know now I'm far more equipped to deal with whatever experience comes along than I was the first time the infidelity happened.
Mhm.
Yeah. I Go ahead.
I was just going to say that was kind of where I was going with that question, is where just getting people to see
Mhm.
where you're at now, the relationship that you have with the Lord, the growth and the healing that you've done. And because I think that even for myself, and I'll speak for myself, like I'm so much of a different person today than I was, 7, 8 years ago.
Mhm,
I'm wiser. I have a better relationship with the Lord. Like so much in my life has changed that I too feel as though if we were to go through a marriage crisis again, it would look completely different than
mhm,
it did 7 years ago.
mhm,
And my point is that's why, teaching our children, like, that's why it's so important that you
mhm.
have a relationship with the Lord early on
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
continue that.
Mhm,
Yeah. I was just gonna say too that that makes so much sense because when you have a close relationship with the Lord and you know what the Lord says about you and you grow closer to the Lord during your marriage crisis, if it were to happen again, you view that person that's betraying you like you're able to separate them from the sin,
mhm,
Mhm.
them from the act that's hurting you.
mhm,
Um, and when you're able to do that, you're able to pull them closer to the Lord
mhm.
because your reactions and your responses and the way that you feel are completely different.
Yeah, that point right there is really good, Aaron. And I do believe in the beginning of, when I found out about the affair and everything, I did not see that. I
Yeah.
was like, why is he waking up and doing this to me? When the red flags were there all along. And I'm not saying red flags as in he was going to cheat, red flags that we were in trouble and our relationship was there all along, like from day one. But I do think that God got me to a place, which is why I stood so long,
Mhm.
because I was able to separate David isn't evil. He's not trying, like, he's not a person that wants to make somebody else hurt. He's not that kind of person. Now there are those people out there, but it's just a small portion of the population, like 1%, that want to cause pain to other people. But at the end of the day, I knew David wasn't like that. And as I grew in the Lord, he helped me see that. And consequently, I began to pray, Lord, help me see people the way you see them.
Yeah.
And in that prayer, he helped me see myself too, because I remember thinking, but it all started when I was, I'd gone to found out about the betrayal and then started seeking the Lord. And then in prayer about, like, why do I do the stupid things that I do? I don't want to do the things anymore, and all that kind of thing. The Lord helped me see I was making decisions based upon my pain.
Mhm.
Now, that does not mean that I am not accountable for my decisions. I have to understand that those decisions I made were my decisions, and those decisions had consequences, and I had to pay them. I mean, that's just how it is. But I understood eventually that if I healed my pain, then I wouldn't be making decisions from that pain anymore. And then ultimately, that helped me see where David was. Oh, he's in pain, and that's why he's doing these things. And so it equipped me in a way to continue to stand. Years ago, I did a video specifically about the spouse that cheats, about their pain, which people probably didn't like, but it is true that they are in pain and that's why they do what they're going to do. And if you don't heal your pain, if you don't deal with it, it's going to deal with you. And that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that too, most people make, like you said, they make permanent decisions
Mhm,
based off of how they're feeling in the moment and not recognizing the entire picture of what's going on,
mhm,
and how that permanent decision without making a decision without healing, without being able to separate the person from the sin is
mhm.
affecting, oh my gosh, generations,
Yeah.
and we don't have to, like, this can be lots of areas of broken trust. It
Mm.
doesn't just have to be around an affair.
Yeah.
It can be around habits that people have that continue to break trust with people around them,
Mhm.
um, things like that. So, but the
Yeah.
same principles of what we're talking about apply to
Every
in
situation.
every situation in a marriage. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I don't have any statistics on this. I can just tell based off of like say this based off of experience and all the clients that I've talked to. You don't going back to what you're saying, Melody, you don't just wake up and decide that you want to hurt your spouse.
Mhm.
It's that's I've again in my experience, I've never talked to a client that was like, yeah, I just decided that I really wanted to break my spouse today and or, by doing what I did. Never.
And I would say for me, never.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
me either.
Like, I don't even know if we need statistics because I
Yeah.
mean, for the 3 of us with all of the people,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
never a spouse has done something to intentionally
Mhm.
hurt the person that they're married to.
Yeah.
But that's
And
definitely how the hurt person sees it.
Yeah, it
yeah, it
is.
definitely is, and
Mhm.
I think in our humanness, that's just a process that we have to go through. Like, there is definitely a process that we go through when something hurtful happens, and what we're fighting is the flesh against the spirit. The flesh wants us to stay in the feels and be the victim and all that kind of thing, but the spirit is saying, "Okay, I'm giving you time for that, but you've got to move on from there. You can't stay at that place." When y'all were saying that, people don't typically wake up and want to hurt their spouse, I agree with that. But what they're doing is they're not wanting to hurt anymore either. So when I wake up in the morning, if I make decisions to cheat on my spouse, if I make decisions to, become an addict, and it is a decision. I don't know that it's necessarily a conscious decision of, hey, let me become an addict, but it's a process that you get there. Hey, I want to get up and, put us in $100,000 worth of debt. People aren't making that decision either. But what they're doing is, I feel terrible about myself, so I'm going to go gamble and maybe I'll make some money. I feel terrible about myself because of things that have happened in my past, so I just don't want to feel anymore. So I'm going to put a needle in my arm. I don't feel loved because of my past. I'm going to go find somebody who loves me because I don't know if this person, I'm not sure if this person loves me. So I got to find somebody to fill that void, when in reality, the only one that can fill the void is Jesus.
Yeah.
So our
It's just not as
our
black as
pain hurts other people. And that's why it's important for us to going back to breaking a generational curse. It's important for us to address our demons so that our children don't have to do that.
That's right.
Mhm.
Because if we don't, they will.
Mhm.
And yeah, and so many people don't know that and don't understand it. And a lot of what's going on in their marriage that's creating the habits, the infidelity, like whatever it is actually coming from their parents or their grandparents. It's a generational, and you have to learn about it so that you can break it.
Mhm. Mhm. And the devil wants us to be so distracted by our pain. I mean, our feelings,
Mhm.
right? Our feelings. Because, when he tempted Jesus, he wanted Jesus to be in his feels, right? I can give you everything. I can make you feel amazing. And if the devil can distract us by the way that we feel, he's got us, right? We almost stay frozen. But that's why it's important to have a relationship with God. It's important to have people around you that's going to speak truth into that, because you have to pull yourself up out of that. Yes, I know that it sucks that you are hurting. Like, yes, you've done wrong. Now later on, we got to really kind of focus on, I'm sorry, you've been done wrong. Later on, we have to focus on what did you contribute to that? Okay. Not that my husband's affair is not my fault. Like, I didn't make him have an affair, but I was responsible for the emotional disconnect, right? With some of the things that I did. But it's okay that you feel wronged. It's okay that you feel hurt. You just can't stay there. And you got to look later on of what did I do? What what pain have I caused in this situation?
Yeah.
All right. So if you find yourself in a crisis due to an affair or broken trust, we'll say, what are some things that you can do? So, number one, you have to stop making permanent decisions in your acute pain.
Mhm,
Number two, you have to separate healing from decision making. And which I know that sounds really hard to do when you're in the thick of it. Number three, focus on stabilization before reconciliation. And number four, get support. You have to have a support system.
mhm,
And I often find, when I think about when clients come to us, it's really hard for people to make the decision to get help. But I think what makes it better than going to a best friend or going to a parent or going to somebody close that we don't have any emotional bias one way or the other. And we're coming from a place of, just understanding and support. And we can just offer that to someone when they're feeling, like I said, just in the thick of it and they don't know what to do. And I can just remember so many times, and it was typically men, they would say, Sonia, I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm here, but something made me click on your name.
mhm,
So
Well, and two, you need to make sure that, if you're getting help, that you're in a place that you truly want help and you truly want to heal and you truly want your life to change. And you don't find someone that's going to validate how you feel,
mhm,
that they're going to understand how you feel and then help pull you from that victim mentality.
mhm.
There are people that are victims of betrayal, but that's not who you are.
Yeah.
And so
You don't have to stay in victimhood.
you don't
Things happen to people, crappy things happen to people all the time.
all day.
And
Mhm.
you have to deal with the blows. But when you were talking about support, Sonia, it was like, yeah, the support's going to look in different ways. Yes. Yeah, we understand the pain, get it, but staying there is not going to help your situation at all. Making decisions or spiraling is not going to help you at all. And at some point, especially if you coach with me, you might hear, suck it up, buttercup. Sorry, that sucks. But, you know, but that was kind of a lot of self talk that I did for myself too, because I'm just kind of that person. Man, the last thing I want to be is a victim. I tell you that. I just don't want to be a victim. Not that I can't, I mean, I've had stuff happen to me, but I just don't ever want to have that mindset. And that's what I want for our clients is to not stay in that place because you become victorious, right? You become if you stay in victimhood, you're just going to always be defeated and you're almost going to bring the bad things on you. It's
Mhm.
like you're inviting the bad things, but if you overcome that, then it's like you're reframing your life completely and you become victorious no matter what you encounter, you know? We got to let God into that place. And we got to be real with ourselves. Like we got to look at ourselves and say, you're the problem.
Mhm. Yeah, you got to look yourself in the mirror and have an honest conversation.
Yep.
All right, moving on. Number four, when one partner wants out. This
Mm.
is when the partner says, I'm done. I want a separation. Divorce feels inevitable. So that is crisis number four. And I can definitely say that fits me to a T. I was the one that was like that. I'm
Mhm.
out. I'm done.
Mhm. Tell us why. Where were you at your life that you felt like you.
Broken,
Mhm,
identity crisis,
mhm.
lost.
Yeah.
So, based on where you were at then, like going back then with all the things you were thinking, all the things you were saying to your friends, all the justification of why you wanted out, why it was right for you to leave based on what you know now, where you are at now. How can you speak to the difference? And I guess too, how detrimental that could have been had you left and everything happened the way that you were thinking you wanted it to happen then. Like, where would you be today?
Well, I'll answer the first question first. Um, I I was definitely so incredibly insecure, and I
Mhm.
did not have a relationship with the Lord. And so just that in itself, when, you're just I just kind of like feel as though I was in this, just didn't know where to turn to, who to go to. And here's the best way I can say it. It's ways of the world. That was my lifeline. Let me what everybody else is telling me, what the world says to do, what society says to do. And I think at that point in time too, it was even, people around me that were like, "Yeah, you can do this." Like, "You're a strong woman." I didn't feel strong at all. Felt nothing but strong at that point. But had we completely gone through with it, where I would be today, well, I'd be divorced, I potentially my husband would be with another woman, I might be with another man, we'd have a broken home. My children, who knows where they would be right now, to be honest. And I think I've
That's
talked about this before, like there were so many years of, even after crisis, the rebuilding of relationships, not only with my husband, but with my kids too. And there was so much that needed to be rebuilt within that. And so I just, thank the Lord, obviously, for being able to put us back together and for who I am today and knowing what I know now. So, going back to the question that I asked Melody earlier, I would handle it completely differently today because I am a different person. I have a relationship with the Lord. I know who I am.
Mhm. So let me ask you, when you left or when you were deciding to leave, what was the narrative about your marriage? And was it like, I'm the problem, so I got to leave? Or was it Jason's the problem, so I got to leave? Like, what were you saying to yourself?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, both. And
Hmm.
feeling as though, again, because I didn't know who I was, I
Hmm.
just felt so incredibly lost that was going to be the answer. Let me leave so I can rebuild me and figure out who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
think a
even
lot of,
and I did leave for
mhm,
like 6 months and I still didn't figure it out. I
yeah.
didn't figure it out until 18 months in reconciliation is when I
Yeah.
finally started to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of times when people like they're dissatisfied with where they're at, and I mean, I know this of myself. If I'm dissatisfied, I look for someone else to blame because it surely couldn't be me, or at least this is how it was several years ago. But now, like, because God does the work in your heart, if you let Him, you got to let Him, right? You shift to, okay, Lord, what is it in me that I'm doing or not doing that's making me feel dissatisfied? Like, why do I feel like I need to cope in a negative way or doom scroll or whatever the situation is? Like, so when God does a work in your heart, it kind of helps you reframe, and you don't start making those snap decisions of, I got to leave, I got to bail, I got to find someone else to blame, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I didn't have any of that wisdom back then
Mhm,
or relationship to not even any type of alignment to get me to that place of asking myself those questions.
mhm.
I
Let me,
was
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, what at that point in time did you need from Jason? What did you need him to do? You don't have to say whether he did it or not, but what did you need him to do to help you in that situation?
Oh, that's a really good question.
think you needed him to do.
I honestly don't know. I
Mhm,
don't know if there's anything, and this is gonna sound horrible, and I never liked to say this to clients, but it was just the truth and the fact of the matter.
mhm,
I think I had to go. I had to leave. That's what
Mhm,
brought us back together.
mhm. So consequences of what that separation looked
Mm,
like. It's
yeah.
exactly what David says. It's definitely he said, "You obviously in the beginning, I was all over the place, you know, begging, pleading, trying to convince, ignoring, blocking, unblocking, all the stupid things, enabling, all that. I did that in the beginning, but then once I got a hold of myself, like really started trying to help or learn to regulate my own emotions. David said, there's not like you couldn't have done more than what you did. Like at
Yeah.
some point, I had to be faced with the consequences and then get real with God. And that's the thing. And so, you know, people that are standing for their marriage will sometimes try to do all these things.
Mhm.
Uh, and when really all that person should do is work on themselves and regulate themselves, because when you regulate yourself, you actually respond better and interact better. Not that you won't hurt or anything, but you'll just handle that a lot better. And then you got to turn this person over to the Lord. You really do. I heard Philip Anthony Mitchell say, if a person won't turn around, you have to pray them into the enemy's hands. Like pray them into the enemy's hands, basically, so that they have consequences, right?
Mhm.
Not consequences that you cause, right? Now, there are some that you might have to put boundaries on, right? If they're drinking and driving with your kids, there's got to be some type of boundary there. It might involve the law, it might not involve the law. It just depends on the circumstances. But he says, pray people into the hands of the enemy, because that's when the consequences come.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I think it's great that we're talking about this because so many times when we're working with people, and I know y'all have experienced the same thing because we've talked about it, but out of desperation, our clients will want to do things
Hmm.
thinking that, well, if I give her the money, then she'll come back. And they just try to just over give. And what that does is it stands in the way of a natural consequence that that person's going to experience. And those natural consequences are the very things that bring them back home.
Hmm.
Because when they're in the pit, they realize I've made a mistake. I'm ruining my family. The choices that I'm making, I can't do this. It is harder, all the things. So yeah, so I think that that's something huge to remember is to not stand in the way of natural consequences
Hmm.
because that's what ultimately made you start thinking, Sonia, wasn't it? Isn't that what you said?
Well, yeah, and, also what we tell clients too is and what you're saying, Aaron, is you've gotta stop pushing. The more that you do, the further away that person's gonna go, and I
Hmm.
do remember, my husband back then, and I understand why he did it. He didn't wanna lose his wife, he didn't wanna lose his children, and I was dead set on leaving and moving out, and, he was so desperate for me not to go, and coming up with all of these reasons as to why I shouldn't go. And the more that he did that, and the more conversations that we had, and the more ideas he came up with, the further away I went. And I
Hmm.
remember this one client that I had, and we would talk about these things, and he would come to me and he would say, I think I'm going to leave some flowers on her doorstep and I'm going to give her like a Lululemon gift card and I'm going to do all of these things. And I would tell him, no, please don't do that. I'm telling you, that is going to make her so angry.
Yeah.
Sure enough, he'd come back to me and he said, you were right. He's like, but I had to try.
Hmm.
Um, Unfortunately, they did end up getting a divorce, and funny enough, I actually heard from him this morning, and he just every now and then he'll check in with me and just say like, "Hi, how are you?" And then he'll say something like, "I should have listened to you." You would tell me all the time not to do these things.
Hmm.
But yes, it's so very important that you recognize the behaviors that you have. You're under emotional distress and your emotions want to make you do things that you are going so there's consequences on both sides, right? Like I
Yeah.
had a consequence and he had a consequence.
Yeah.
The
Hmm.
consequences looked very different, but there were consequences on
Yeah.
both sides.
Yeah. I remember doing David saying over and over again, I don't want a wife. I don't want a wife. And then I just kept on doing wifely things. And he
Mhm.
didn't tell me to stop. He was reaping the benefit of it. And eventually I was like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just over there just saying, yeah, you do. You want a wife. You just don't know you want one.
But it
What an
was out of
idiot.
desperation
Yeah.
because you had fear, and fear drives poor behavior, and we have to recognize and pinpoint back, okay, how am I feeling right now? And what feeling or emotion is driving my behavior?
hmm hmm
So,
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It was fear. I was
yeah,
grasping at anything I possibly could. And that's going back to what we were saying, is that you can't control what's happening over there. Now, you could not make it worse. Like if I was screaming and calling him names and trying to manipulate him and control him and all that kind of thing, that wouldn't be good either.
right.
But showering him or love bombing him is not going to work either. Right? You just need to be still and work on yourself and let the Lord handle the rest.
Literally 5 minutes ago, I was going to say people do not know how to be still anymore. They don't
Mhm,
know how to be bored. They don't know how to be still. And they are allowing the ways of the world to destroy their family.
mhm.
I mean, just look at the TikTok videos and the Instagram reels.
Yeah.
They're teaching you how to do that.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
telling you what you want to hear.
What cracks me up is all this trendy talk about brain rot and these kids and like brain rot and whatever. And it's like, it ain't the kids, it's everyone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's sad because it is literally destroying families.
It
Yeah.
is.
If
Absolutely.
cell phones could be taken away for 7 straight days, just that small amount of time, people would realize how much it's affecting their relationships within their home.
I
Girl,
think it
people
needs
don't
to
even
be
go to the
longer than
bathroom.
that.
It does need to
Yeah.
be longer, but just that short amount of time would make people realize.
Mhm.
Yeah.
P
All right.
People don't, hang on, I wanna say one thing. People
Okay.
don't
Sorry.
go to the bathroom without their phone. I mean, it's,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
tied to them. They can't even pee without
no,
their phone.
you're
I'm gonna
right.
tell you, a few weeks ago was Layla's birthday, and we went to Houston, and I forgot my phone at home. And at first, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I forgot my phone at home." And David was like, "Do you wanna go back and get it?" And by this time, we were already, like, 15 minutes down the road. And I was like, "You know what?
No,
No. If somebody needs to get in touch with me, they can call you."
that's
Like,
right.
it wasn't, and
Mhm.
that day, it was such a peaceful day, and I noticed everything around me and,
Mhm.
all that kinda thing. I people watched and all that kinda thing. We don't need our phones.
We don't.
Yeah.
I survived, like, 30 years without one. Maybe not 30, but a long time.
All right, we've got one more to get through, but I want to quickly touch on the points of, so when one partner wants to walk out, what you do, and we've kind of already covered these, but it's stop convincing and start stabilizing yourself. You want to make sure you regulate your emotions first. This one's a tough one. Respect space without disappearing.
Mhm,
And then this is a very important one. Focus on becoming emotionally safe, not persuasive,
mhm,
because you cannot control their choice, but you can control who you become in the process. Okay, this kind of aligns to, I can identify with this one too. Crisis number 5, identity or life transition crisis. And so this often looks like, we'll call it like this midlife shift, which
mhm,
really can happen at any time. A career loss or change. Sometimes it can be parenting stress, or faith shifts or personal awakening.
mhm. Or even a death.
Mhm.
Right before, everything went down with me and David, it was like my dad died, his dad died, and then my brother died. It was like back to back to back. And I know for me, when my dad died, I like definitely isolated, and I didn't lean on David or whatever. Um, and it caused, that actually even caused problems between him and I. And so it could be death too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I I will say that I kind of got in the habit of asking when I would talk to clients, and usually on the first appointment, I would ask if there was anything significant that had happened in the last, 3 months to a year. And
Mhm,
I would Again, I don't have any statistics, but just off of experience, 9 times out of 10, it was something like that. I lost my job, we had a baby, we had a death in the family, somebody got sick, we
Mhm.
moved, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah. There are statistics on that that says typically when a person goes through a midlife crisis, in the previous 3 to 5 years, there was something that happened significant that they didn't, mourn the right way, or they didn't deal with. And there are, I can't remember where they're at, but there are statistics about that.
And
Biggest
again, when you have a relationship with the Lord and when you have growth and wisdom and alignment in your life, when a crisis happens, and whether, it's a death or a loss or whatever that may be, it changes you and you're able to react or respond differently to those things than you
Hmm.
would if you didn't have the Lord in your life. You didn't have a relationship with the Lord.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need Jesus, y'all.
That's right.
Everybody has an identity. Like every single person has an identity. It's either going to align with the Lord or it's not. Right. And whatever you believe to be true about yourself is how you're going to behave and what you're going to do. And that's just all there is to it. If your identity is aligned in Christ, you're going to behave that way. Now, you'll never be perfect. Like we just were having a conversation before we came over here, you know, initially when something happens we kind of go through this process of being human. But if you have the Lord, then you kind of realign and you look at things differently, and you're like, I want to be different in this situation. I don't want to be the old Melody that I was before. And so I have a little bit of self-compassion in the terms of like, okay, you're feeling this now just because you're really hurt, and so you can feel this way for a day or two, but after that you really got to change. Now, you got to shift and do what Jesus would call you to do. I mean, you just have to, and that's hard sometimes, um, especially when the pain goes deep or it hits particular wounds, like deep wounds that you have. But at the end of the day, you have to shift. If you don't have your identity in Christ, man, that's when you start making those decisions based upon pain and doing all kinds of crazy stuff that is not going to render you anything good.
Yeah.
That's right. All right. So, what to do if you find yourself in this identity crisis? You have to normalize your growth and not panic about it. You want to be able to communicate your fears without blame. And you also want to allow both partners to evolve. And so, couples sometimes just don't know how to grow together. And that's why you also just have to be in alignment with each other when something does happen. So, and look, we're at the age where, I mean, my parents are getting older, and I guess it could happen at any time, but it's just making sure that you're in alignment with your spouse and you're growing with them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then also revisit shared vision, not just shared history. So that wraps up our 5 top marriage crises.
There's a lot more, but these are just the top 5.
Yes. All right. So, listeners, if you're listening to this and you find yourself in a marriage crisis, I'm going to leave you with this. Number 1, pause and make sure that you do not make any life altering decisions based on your emotional flooding. Number 2, you want to make sure that you're stabilizing yourself. Your regulation matters more than your words. Number 3, get support. Crisis requires guidance, and that's what we're here for. We're here to support you. You also want to make sure you shift your focus from, instead of saving the marriage, you want to focus on becoming healthy, because again, you want to focus on what you can control. And then also just allow yourself time. And I know that can be hard for some people because there's, certain personality types just want to just act and get things done and move, move, move. And it takes time for these things to heal.
Absolutely. Healing is a journey, not necessarily a destination. And it's not something like you can't will yourself out of pain. You have to walk through it. The good thing, and I think we've talked about this in some of the other podcasts, is like we can be grateful for the crisis because what it renders. It renders
That's right.
a lot. if you let it.
Yeah.
That's
If you're
right.
wi- Yeah. And if you're willing to do the work, it's often the beginning of clarity and a great future.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. If you are looking for a framework that will help you just align spiritually or align with all aspects of your life, please visit our website at itsnotover.net to download our specifics guide. It goes through 9 different areas of your life that will help you become whole and give you clarity and give you total alignment. It's $27. So again, get it at itsnotover.net. See you guys next week. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Emerge Stronger podcast. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us at itsnotover.net. And if we could ask one thing, we would love if you would share this episode and leave us a review. Our goal is to guide people to save themselves and save their marriages. See you next week.